Senator Elissa Slotkin had told Bernie Sanders and AOC to stop using the word oligarchy because they're confusing our simple little American public.
Krystal Ball and Ryan Grim of Breaking Points take a look at Elissa Slotkin's recent comments about Bernie Sanders using the term oligarchy because, in her words, it doesn't resonate with the American people. Bernie, air quotes, claps back and says that's baloney, which I agree with. So why don't we take a look at this clip together? You know me, I'm a fan of Krystal Ball, and I also think that Ryan Grim does a great job. Breaking Points, the whole team does a good job, but particularly I'm a fan of Krystal Ball. So why don't we take a look at this? I'll have some thoughts, and then I want to know what you think in the comments.
Bernie Sanders was asked about that on Meet the Press. Let's roll his response.
Democrats should stop using the term oligarchy because it's a phrase that doesn't resonate with all Americans. Are you missing a chance to speak to a wider audience, Senator?
Well, geez, we had 36,000 people out in Los Angeles, 34,000 people in Colorado. We had 30,000 people in Folsom, California, which is kind of a rural area. I think the American people are not quite as dumb as Ms. Slotkin thinks they are. I think they understand very well. When the top 1% owns more wealth than the bottom 90%, when big money interests are able to control both political parties, they are living in an oligarchy. And these are precisely the issues that have got to be talked about. Are you living in a democracy when Mr. Musk can spend $270 million to elect Trump and then becomes the most important person in government? Or AIPAC and other super PACs have enormous power over Democratic candidates. Those are issues that we have got to talk about. That is the reality of American society today. The very rich getting richer, working class people are struggling, 800,000 people sleeping out on the streets. If we don't address that issue, the American people will continue to turn their backs on democracy because they're looking around them and they're saying, does anybody understand what I am going through?
AOC's response, and we can put up D2 here, was simply to put up the dictionary definition of oligarchy for anybody who need it. Although surveys showed that actually people don't need it, that people were asked if they could define it, and they basically could. It's not that complicated a word, like a bunch of billionaires running everything.
Well, and Elissa Slotkin, many pointed out, had no problem using the word oligarchy when she was applying it to Russia.
Oh, yes.
There were all sorts of posts to her talking about Russian oligarchs and oligarchy or whatever. It's only when it's being applied here at home that the former CIA spook has a problem with it. So, yeah.
You know, I'm always on the lookout for the left adopting some faculty lounge language that might be kind of off-putting. I don't think that's what's happening here, but I'm curious for your take. But for me, if it works in two different ways, because it works for independents who feel like the system is rigged and is controlled by billionaires. It works for people on the left who buy into the entire thing, but it also works with kind of resistance libs who have been really energized around defending democracy. And the left and some others kind of scoff at that, this whole like, oh, democracy, that's not real, it's a distraction from fighting for the working class and for improving people's material conditions. But oligarchy is a frame that covers that. Right. Like if you are somebody who is worried about our democracy eroding, who's the one eroding it? Right. It's the oligarchs. Right. So you capture everybody under that umbrella.
I think that's really well put, and the proof is in the pudding. Like, we know who is turning up to those Bernie AOC rallies. It's not just, quote unquote, Bernie bros from 2016 and 2020. It is a lot, and we talked to Dave Weigel about this, it is a lot of normie Democrats, which is why AOC is shooting up in the polls in terms of who is the leader of the Democratic Party. And so, I think it's an incredibly helpful frame. As you said when we were talking about this on Friday, I think voters actually appreciate being treated as adults who are capable of understanding concepts that, like oligarchy, which I think we are all getting a rapid lesson in how that takes shape and what it means for all of us. So, political consultants have been trying to come up with this sort of focus grouped language about how do we connect the fight for democracy with people's, with the price of eggs or whatever. And usually that ends up in a very tortured direction where you're not really making a good case either about the material circumstances or about the genuine threats to democracy. And I think the framing of oligarchy really does serve those ends incredibly effectively. Like, you can see no one else in the Democratic Party has garnered the level of energy, attention, and excitement as AOC and Bernie have. I guess next I would put like Chris Van Hollen, taking a genuinely, I would say, courageous action, going down to El Salvador, like actually doing something out in the real world. I will say a lot of liberals are very excited about Cory Booker's speech. That one didn't speak to me personally as much, but I do want to say a lot of people were really excited about that because it at least showed some sort of fight. But, viewing what is happening in the Trump administration through this lens of oligarchy, I think really does unify the left, the liberals, and creates this sort of powerful coalition that is also somewhat oppositional to the think tank driven abundance conversation that Elissa Slotkin, I don't know if she calls herself an abundance person, but she would be more in line with that. And the last thing I'll say about it is AOC, and you could speak to this better than anyone, she has really positioned herself previously as wanting to work within the boundaries of the Democratic Party and not wanting to get too crosswise with leadership, et cetera. The fact that she and Bernie are both taking a much more directly adversarial position vis-a-vis Elissa Slotkin firing back, I think is also kind of a sign of the times and a sign they feel that the public is on their side.
Isn't that obvious? I mean, there is polling that shows that Democrats, I mean, the Republicans are anti-Democrat, DNC in any case, but people don't think that the Democratic Party represents their interest or is in touch, I guess is the language that's being used. They're out of touch. And when you see the Chuck Schumers and the Nancy Pelosi's insisting that, oh, no, we're all about the working class people, please read the room. Look at these rallies these folks are having. The reality is undeniable. And when you're a Nancy Pelosi who's defending the ability to trade stocks as a senator, when we see the level of corruption that is happening right now, I mean, it's like, come, guys, like I said, read the room.
Yeah, because a lot of times in the past, the party establishment or Slotkin types would fire at Bernie or AOC, people in the squad, and they wouldn't even fire back.
That's right.
They would just take the arrows
Yep.
and be like, we're being part of a team, not as well, what kind of team is this that's just constantly shooting at you? But now they're feeling better. Like they're feeling their oats and they're ready to fire back. And on that front, we have news out this morning that Justice Democrats is making its first endorsement, not just of the 2026 cycle, but even of the 2024 cycle. Well, not that they didn't endorse anybody in the 2024 cycle, but they didn't recruit anybody to challenge sitting incumbents because they put all of their energy into protecting the squad. 4 of whom they survived, 2 of whom famously, Cori Bush and Jamal Bowman, after tens of millions were spent, did not. So this is the first time that they're going back on offense. And it's Donovan McKinney, who is a state rep in Detroit, who's running against Sri Thanadar, who we'll talk about in a moment, and is quite a fun guy to kind of.
He's a character.
He's quite a character. So this would give you 2 Justice Democrats in Detroit because Rashida Tlaib is there as well. He's a former climate activist. Grew up working class in Detroit, and he talks about that in his biography. Which let's roll his launch video, which is rolling out this morning, just to get a sense of where kind of the Justice Democrats left is in thinking about their positioning against an incumbent Democrat. So let's roll this opening ad.
People across this country and even the world know Detroit, or they think they do. They know our music, our sports, our struggle. But what people always forget is none of this is possible without our people. This district is one of the poorest places in America, but the Mighty 13th knows hard work better than anyone. It's the people who clock in generation after generation, shift after shift, that get forgotten first. Somewhere along the way, we got convinced we should settle for less from the people we elect to represent us. I'm running for Congress because we deserve better. We deserve a Democratic Party that leads the fight against the billionaires robbing us blind, that stands up to corporate PACs. Our country and our children can afford nothing less. People like our congressman, Sri Thanadar, are the problem. A multi-millionaire who spent millions to buy a seat of Congress, who has more in common with Donald Trump and Elon Musk than people like us. I was born next to smokestacks. We moved 13 times as a kid. Sometimes it was an apartment, sometimes it was a family member's house, sometimes it was even our own car. But wherever it was, my mom and grandma made sure it felt like home. I spent my life trying to give back to help the place and people I love. I've never forgotten my roots or the true purpose of why I serve. So always put the people first. When things are darkest, it's when you fight the hardest. I'm running for my wife, mother, and grandmother, and all women who deserve a Congress that fights for their rights. I'm running for my baby boys, because the block you live on should determine how far you'll go. I'm running for you, because like all of you, I know we deserve better. This is my home. This is our community. This is our future. And the choice is ours. I'm Donovan McKinney, and I'm running for Congress to take back this seat for us, always with the people.
So what do you make of that messaging? I mean, the touch, the vocabulary, Green New Deal, Medicare for all, like that type of stuff that was stock in 2018 wasn't really in there. But what do you think of the messaging?
Yeah, it's a class framing. This guy's on a touch. He's in there. He has more in touch with Donald Trump and Elon Musk than he does with you and me. I'm connected to this community, and I'm gonna be the one who's there to actually fight for you.
Well, we can certainly call it class or even class warfare or class messaging. But isn't it? This is the same kind of thing that Trump used to win. I mean, obviously he was lying about everything, but he had an uncanny sense of picking up on the discontent, which comes from, as Bernie has said, his entire political year, his 40 years in public service, is about wealth inequality, right? It's gotten so extreme at this point that literally all the rest of us are feeling it to varying degrees. So while class warfare or class messaging could seem iffy when the economy is wonderful and a great big beautiful bell curve of a thriving middle class and what most people think it sort of should be, then that could be sort of like, well, I don't know that's the but in a situation like this, when it feels like there is active class warfare going on from the top down, where it's one class of 400 families and all the rest of us, there's like 400 families are the haves, that's the one class, and then all the rest of us are the have-nots. Messaging like this doesn't feel radical at all to me. It feels like, let's take our government back, please.
Now, the funny thing is who he's running against. You just can't make this guy up. So we roll the next element. Zed Jelani busted this guy in absolutely hilarious fashion in 2018 when he was running for governor of Michigan. He was actually the front runner for governor, ahead of Whitmer, when Zed wrote this story. And the story was that he met with a bunch of consultants ahead of the race, both Republican and Democratic, and they asked him, like, tell us about yourself. Like, if we're going to represent you, what party are you going to run as? Like, are you Republican, you Democrat? He's like, you tell me.
Oh my God.
It's like, I want to be governor. Tell me what I need.
What's the lane?
What's the lane, and tell me what I need to say. Like, he was like confused. Like, wait a minute, I'm going to tell you this. You're the consultant.
Oh my God.
You tell me what I think. And the one thing that was consistent in his conversations with these consultants was that he had a visceral disdain for Bernie. But Bernie was hot then, so he ended up running as Bernie. He was going to do Medicare for all for Michigan, and like he did a whole Bernie campaign and was spending his own money, and as a result was at the very top. And then this came out as like, and then other things. Like he's just a complete mess. So then in 2022.
So the Bernie branding initially actually was working.
It was actually working for him. And then he faded and Whitmer wins. Then in 2022, he runs for Congress and spends millions of his own money as a leftist again. First, and I guess it was 2020, he wins like a state rep seat or something. So he buys a house in the legislature.
Okay.
Then he runs for Congress. When he was in the legislature, he signed on to resolutions that called Israel an apartheid state and said that it should not get any U.S. funding. So, it's common, popular position in Detroit. So he runs for Congress saying similar things. AIPAC spent like $4 or $5 million in 2022 trying to beat him. And he overcame it because he spent so much of his own money. So he's then elected to Congress. After he's elected to Congress, AIPAC takes him and his family on a trip to Israel. And he comes back.
He's reformed.
Does a complete 180.
Oh my God.
So then in 2024, activists in Detroit recruit somebody to run against him. And AIPAC spends millions defending Sri Thanadar because now he's a full-on pro-Israel guy.
That's so funny, though, that he had already defeated them and then capitulates.
Yes.
The move is to be John Fetterman and just be like, I don't want you in my race. Let me
So AIPAC has now
capitulate it from the jump.
They have now spent like $10 million on him, half of it against him, half of it for him. His opponent, her name was Mary Waters, she raised only about $200,000. So she didn't really run. She was serious, but she didn't have the money to compete.
Gotcha. So what you're telling me is Donovan is going to be facing millions of dollars in.
He's definitely going to be facing millions, but he has already. The other thing that makes this a much different Justice Democrats race is that he already has the support of like a ton of like establishment Democrats.
Interesting.
Just because Sri Thanadar is just a ridiculous figure.
Interesting.
It's so weird to them, and it's not helpful to them to have a member of Congress who you can't trust. You don't know like what he's going to believe a week later. So even if you're just a machine politician, that's not helpful for you.
He's almost like the George Santos of the left.
He's yes, like it, and there are allegations of fraud which you can find. Like it's a real Santos of the left kind of situation. And so even regular Democrats, and I think sources in Detroit say that this could be the first JD candidate out of the gate to actually have like organized labor support, which is
would be huge.
like that's the coalition that you need. That you need the kind of DSA or whatever you call it, plus organized labor, to like actually take over the party.
So how much offense is Justice Democrats in a position to go on this cycle?
Not a ton, and they've never
gotta pick their spots,
and they've never really. The first year when they did AOC and Cori Bush and Rashida Tlaib and Ilhan Omar, all the others, they endorsed like 100 plus people. They've never done that since then because they couldn't. All they could do is endorse.
Right.
They could only really go in on a couple.
A few.
So we'll see now if they team up with our guy. What's his name? The DNC vice president.
Oh, David
Parkland.
Hogg.
Yeah, David Hogg, who's talking about spending millions of dollars. Going after.
Bernie's recruiting candidates as well.
Yeah, and if they're threatening to kick him out of the DNC for doing this, which he's got to leave the DNC, right? Like if he capitulates and walks back from that, that's the end of him, right?
Oh, I mean, in my opinion, I guess it wouldn't be the end of him as like party functionary.
You could be a party functionary the rest of your life. That doesn't seem to be what he wants to be.
Yeah, and he has enough of his own profile. He doesn't need the DNC. So,
right.
Yeah, that's what I would think as well.
DNC vice president. What, vice chair? What is that? I doubt he even gets paid for that.
I have no idea. Yeah, I have no idea. It gets you like, you get into the suites with the fancy corporate boxes and whatever.
I guess you get some boxes. Yeah, so Donovan McKinney taking on Sri Thanadar. It'd be interesting if he knocks him off, but in some ways, it would not be like when AOC took out Joe Crowley.
Yeah.
That was a blow to the structure of the Democratic Party. Now they replaced him as caucus chair with Hakeem Jeffries, so the structure restructured itself. But taking out Sri Thanadar, nice, but it's like
there's plenty of establishment Democrats who would be on board with that goal as well.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think you can look at the polling for your answers, but I think it's also just a vibe that if you're just listening and paying attention, you can see how frustrated the traditionally Democratic voters are with the Democratic Party. Like, how did you lose this election? How did you let them after the disastrous 4 years, how did you let this happen? And you could be like, oh, Biden, no. It's a rhetorical question. I know what happened. But sometimes I comment to my buddy who I talk about this stuff with. It's like the Democrats, the DNC does nothing so well as lose an election. Let me know what you think in the comments.